So we're going to talk about Mark chapter 5, and if you have any questions, just save your questions until the end of this year. And so if you have your Bibles, you want to turn to Mark chapter 5. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go through just exegesis, look at certain words throughout the passage, and then at the end we'll kind of pull something out and maybe discuss a couple of points on this lesson. Now here you see that they go to this area here. In Greek this is pronounced Geranes, but sometimes some of your versions have different areas. You may have this word Gadara, but it's probably this city here where Jesus and his disciples go across the sea and land here. But all this area was basically known as a Gentile area. And so when this word is mentioned, yes, it does mention that city, but everyone who in this area heard that knew this was an area full of Gentiles. So it says here, they came to the other side of the sea in the country of Gerasenes. And when Jesus stepped out of the boat, he immediately there met a man out of the tombs, met a man out of the tombs, a man with an unclean spirit. He lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. And so here we have Jesus coming across the sea, and we have this person here. Now, within the Jewish idea of madness, I think may come into play here, because the Talmud of the Jewish, which has the Mishnah and the Gemara, which is the commentary. I don't know if it's Babylonian or Jerusalem, but in any event, generally a Jew thought that madness was basically four things. One is that they walked around at night. They spent the night near a grave. They would tear their clothes, and they would be destroying their own personal property. Well, that really defines about half my kinfolks. But in any event, we move on. But that's generally, and we see this here, of what this guy with the demon seemed to be having. Verse 4, for he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he wrenched the chains apart, and he broke the shackles in pieces. No one had the strength to subdue him. So evidently, I've often wondered about these demon possessions here in the first century, if the demons gave him that power, or if it was just adrenaline, or just, out of your mind. Some people who seem to have mental distress have more physical strength for some reason or another. And I don't want to get into demon possessions today, but I will tell you they don't exist. There's a couple of verses we can go to, like Zechariah 13:5, 1 Corinthians 10:13. But again, ask me that at the end of the year, and we'll get with that. Verse 5, night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones. Verse 6, when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and fell down before him. Now, if we get this picture here, it's not that this demon-possessed man had great vision, okay? Because this Greek word here for see or saw is not what we would think about as seeing with the eye, blepo, but actually the Greek word is harao. Now, that's important because what this meant was that when Jesus approached the shore, the demon-possessed man understood who this guy was. He understood that he was in the presence, you see, of the Son of God. And so it's not that he saw just a man coming out of the boat and knew, hey, that looks like Jesus, but he felt, you see, the presence of the Son of God. And so what did he do? He ran to him and fell down before him. Now, this Greek word for fell down and before him is proskuneo. Proskuneo is the same word that's translated a lot of times as worship. Now, did the demon fall down and worship Jesus? I don't think so, but the power of Jesus compelled the demon to submit to Jesus, you see. So he fell down and worshipped him. This proskuneo is the same word that's used in Matthew 4:9, where Jesus is, the devil is tempting Jesus. And the devil says to him, all these things I will give you if you fall down and worship me. See, that's the same word. The literal meaning of that word, proskuneo, is actually throwing someone a kiss. That's what that literally means. So in Matthew 4, what Satan is asking Jesus to do is just throw me a kiss. That's what the actual word means there. Okay, verse 7. And crying out with a loud voice, he said, What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you. This is the ESV. The New King James says, I implore you, by God, do not torment me, you see. So, right off the bat, just as we kind of thought about in verse 6, he recognizes who this man is. Now, there was a demon earlier in, I think it was Mark 1:24, where Jesus is preaching at a synagogue. He walks out of the synagogue. There's a man there, demon-possessed, and he mentions that Jesus is the Holy One of God. So the demon understood that this is Son of the Most High God. Now, interesting, you read through here, the demons seem to recognize the divinity of Jesus more than the regular people did. And I think that's because of the supernatural, right? They know God, they know Jesus too. You know, if we think about demons being cast down from heaven and so forth, and they've already had dealings with this man named Jesus, and they know the power that he has. So he asked them here, he says, I adjure you, or I implore you. This word in Greek is actually more like, I'm asking you to make an oath. Please promise, and let's make an oath not to torment me. Let's see here, verse 8. For he was saying to him, this is Jesus was saying to him, come out of the man, you unclean spirit. Now, just to add a little bit of nuance here, this Greek word for come is ekramai, but Jesus uses this word ezekramai. It's an imperfect tense. Well, so what? What does that mean? When you change the tense of come, it means an imperative. Jesus is commanding for this unclean spirit to come out. And with that imperative, it means you can expect action at any time that Jesus wants this spirit to come out. It just shows the power that Jesus has on this. Jesus asked him, what is your name? He replied, my name is Legion, for we are many. Now you see, it's kind of, it's singular a lot here, but then he uses this word legion. Well, it's always been interesting, what does legion mean? In antiquity, and the Old Testament, there's a little bit of this too. If you gave someone your name, that meant you gave them power over you. So the evil spirit, he may not even have a name, I don't know, but he does not want to give Jesus his name, so he just says, Legion, we're many. Now, Legion in the Roman army is about 6,000 soldiers. Now, we know later that there's going to be 2,000 pigs, so we don't know really what that number is. Could just be a metaphor for there's a lot of people in here. Okay, that we're really busy. That's why we're going around and no one can shackle us, that sort of thing. For we are many, okay? Now, and then in verse 10 he says, and he begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Now, this word begged, we're going to see a lot here in the next few verses, is parakaleo. Parakaleo is almost pleading, okay, begging, pleading, that sort of thing. That'll come relevant later. So it says, strange request, don't send us out of the country. That area where we're at, don't send us out. Now, there was a Jewish belief, too, that a lot of evil spirits like to inhabit the country from where they were. What does that mean? I don't know. It sounds weird, but we kind of have that superstition too when we think about haunted houses, right? Because the haunting is in that house, and once you leave the house, you're pretty much okay. Well, we don't want to get into ghosts and stuff like that either, right? Those things are kind of scary. Okay. Where do we want to go here? Okay, let's go to verse 11. Now, a great herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged him, saying, "Send us to the pigs, let us enter them." So he says, here's the same word as here, parakaleo. They begged him, they pleaded with him, "Send us into the pigs," because they're here, and that way we can kind of maybe fool Jesus. Maybe we'll stay in our own country. That's the most important thing. So here, he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out, entered the pigs, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep banks into the sea and drowned. Now, here's a very, very important point. If you don't get anything out of this lesson, get this. This is the first known instance of deviled ham. Okay, well, let's look at this a little further. Not the deviled ham, but back here. So we see here, one of the things is that this steep bank is a really good translation, because this is not like Julie Andrews singing around the sound of music, okay, on the mountainside. This is going to be a steep cliff that they go down, okay, and it means to their death, and they drowned in the sea. Now, Philo, we're all familiar with our good friend Philo, was a Jewish scholar in Alexandria at the time, and he wrote this, and this is important because he was talking about Leviticus 16. Leviticus 16 talks about where they would get a scapegoat. Okay, so they get 2 goats. They get one that they pass the sin on and they sacrifice. The other goat, they pass the sins on, and then what do? They shove him out of the village, and that's what Leviticus 16 talks about, and that's the scapegoat, okay? But later on, it seemed to be that what they would do here, according to Philo, he says, let's just start here. "Therefore, he who wishes to exalt the cause of things will acquire on himself, but he who attributes honor to Christian will be banished, will be driven from the most sacred places, compelled to fall in inaccessible wicked gulf." So what they would do later on is they would get 2 goats. One they would sacrifice. The other they would let go in the village, but they'd make sure he was killed. Okay, they would throw him down a ravine or something like that. So the connection here is kind of maybe what Jesus is trying to do to make them understand what happened, that these evil spirits went into these pigs. They went over the cliff. The sin is wiped away from the country, and it's drowned in the sea, which kind of makes sense too, because there's a lot of things with using water, you see, as purification. We think about the Exodus event, Jonah. Jonah was thrown into the sea, and the men were saved. That sort of thing. Micah 7:18 and 19 says, "Who is God? Who is a God like you, pardoning iniquity and passing over transgressions for the remnant of the inheritance? He does not retain this anger forever, but he delights steadfast love. He will again have compassion on us. He will tread our iniquities underfoot. You will cast all our sins into the depth of the sea." Okay, what's the connection there with this? I don't know, but I think it is interesting, this idea, this Jewish idea of sins being drowned in the sea. Okay, let's see, where are we at now? 14, the herdsmen fled and told it in the city and in the country. The people came to see what was happening. So this was a big event. Okay, you got 2,000 pigs trying to, enter the Water Olympics, as you will. They're going down these steep hills for no reason, because they were just out on the hillside grazing. So then this word, as the people saw, this is a Greek word harao, meaning to understand. So the people came to understand what was happening. Man, our pigs are leaving, okay? And so, verse 15, and they came to Jesus and saw the demon-possessed man, the one who had the legion, sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Now, when they came to Jesus, they use this different word here for see. They use another word that's called theorao, and it's where we get our word for theory. Now, what this means, okay, so what? What does this mean? It means that as they came down, these are the people, right, who probably are the pig owners, came to Jesus, and then they saw the demon-possessed man who had been out of his mind, going around, cutting himself, staying up at night, and he's sitting there clothed, and now they're theorizing what happened. Okay, this man came across in a boat. We saw this man, Legion, run to him and bow, and then our pigs start jumping off cliffs, and here's this man just sitting here. What's happened to him? And they were afraid. Obviously, they knew something magical, you see, was happening here. They don't want to be any part of it because, well, before you know it, they'll be jumping off cliffs, right? They don't quite understand what's going on here. This idea of being in his right mind also has a connotation of being master of his own faculties, if you will. Let's see, verse 16. Those who had seen it described to them what had happened to the demon-possessed man and the pigs. Now here is Saul. They were theorizing what happened, but then they go out and they tell people what happened, and now they use this word harao. They understand what's happened, okay, just as I explained to you earlier. Man come over, legion is healed, our pigs are jumping off. It's because of this man that came across the sea. And what do they want him to do? And they begin to beg. This is parakaleo, the same word used as the demons. They beg Jesus to depart from their region. What does Jesus do? Next verse, 18. As he was getting in the boat, the man who had been possessed with demons begged him that he might be with him. Now this man who had been possessed uses this same Greek word, parakaleo. He begs, he implores him that he might be with him. Verse 19, and he did not permit him, but said to him, go to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis, which is like the 10 cities around there, what Jesus had done for him, and everyone marveled. So this man, this demon-possessed man, wants to go with Jesus. Jesus does not permit him. He says to go home to your friends and tell them how much what they have done for you. He went away and he began to proclaim. This word proclaim is the Greek word keruso. Keruso also can be translated as preach. So this man went away to others and he began to preach what Jesus had done for him. Everyone marveled. This Greek word for marvel is thumazo, which is the word that's used when Jesus would perform a miracle. It says people were amazed. They were marveled. This is what happened. So he's basically going around and telling everyone what Jesus had done for him. And they probably knew who he was, acting crazy, hanging around the graveyards and stuff. And now they see he's out preaching Jesus, okay, in his right mind. Well, here we got this idea that in this story there were 5 requests made. 4 were granted and 1 was not. First request is in verse 7. The pigs said, or the demons said, please do not torment me. And it seems Jesus granted that. Verse 10, the demons asked to remain in the country. So Jesus did that as well. Verse 12, they asked to go into the pigs. Jesus granted that wish too. In verse 17, the people asked Jesus to leave, and Jesus left. That was granted. Verse 18, the demon-possessed man begged to go with Jesus. That request was denied. Now, one of the lessons I wanted to talk about was when people asked Jesus to leave. Good lesson for us. When we ask Jesus to leave us, Jesus will leave. He's not going to beg. He's not going to insist. He's not going to make himself be in our lives. When we ask Jesus to leave our lives, he will leave. The demon-possessed man, in 2 occasions, ran to Jesus, as we found out in the earlier passages, and he also went to Jesus to go with him because he was thankful. And that's biblical, and I'd like to parallel that today. When people say things like, ask Jesus into your heart, you see the opposite of what this guy did. This guy runs to Jesus. This guy gets in the boat, wants to get into the boat with Jesus. He goes to Jesus. Jesus in Matthew 11:28 says, come to me. We don't ask Jesus to come to us. We have to go to him. And yes, the man was denied, but look what he did. He obeyed Jesus. See, and that's the same. When we obey Jesus, that's the same thing as getting in that boat with him. Jesus commanded this man to go to your hometown, tell your friends how much the Lord done for you, have mercy on you. And that's exactly what he did. He didn't sit there at the shore and cry and want to know what's going on. He did exactly what Jesus commanded him to do. And that's the lesson. Thank you.